Hello and welcome to MerMaid Software training. Today's training is going to be how to set up a generic duplex lift station file. First thing I would like to do is go up to the left hand side of my screen and click on the general information for my station creation wizard. First thing we need to do as a minimum is put in a station name. The station I'm going to select here is going to be Willow Point. Now you can also add a description, address, and additional information about the station and an email who's responsible for it. Next thing you want to do is hit Next. And we're going to go ahead and create a new layout using the wizard. Now this particular station is going to be a duplex station, so the number of pumps is 2. But we can select other pumping configurations like a triplex or a simplex station. Since we're only using 2 pumps, that's what we want to have selected in this particular panel. And we can also put in additional information about the pump itself. And then press Next. Now the well dimensions, we have several different well types. We have square, cubed, cylinder, which is our round stations, ellipse, and rectangular. We also have one called Other. The other station files where you actually have a calculated volume for a particular area, and we can put that in as well. Sometimes you have to go back and use Other after you've done the station file to add different volumes. But for this particular station, since it's going to be a generic station, I'm going to use cylinder, which is round, a round station. I'm going to use the most popular one that I've run across, which is 8 foot. Now my options, I have it set up in inches, so that would be 96 inches. The level measurement, we measure from the top of the well or the bottom of the well. Typically I monitor from the top of the well using a level device or a tape measure type of device. If you're measuring from the bottom of the well, that will most likely be a pressure transmitter or transducer that is in the well measuring the level above it. For this case, we're going to measure from the top of the well, but there's other selections, as I said. And I'm going to say from the top of the well to the all-off point or stop level that it's 100 inches. Now my start level for pump 1 or my lead level is going to be 3 feet above my all-off point, which would be 64 inches. And then I'm going to say my lag point or my start level for the next pump would be 1 foot above it, which would be 52 inches. And then I press Next. At this point, to do the data logger device, you need to connect to the particular data logger you're going to be using. So down at the bottom right hand corner it says it's not connected. So I'm going to go to Connections, and it brings up the port that I'm going to use. Press Connect. If you notice, the serial number is now in the window as well as down in the bottom right hand corner. Then press Next. Now depending on the station and the size of the motors that you're monitoring, you want to select your current clamps accordingly. For small motors, 15 horse, 20 horse and below, I usually use the 75 amp current clamps. If I get above about 30 to 40 amp, or excuse me, 30 to 40 horsepower, I go with 150 or to 300 amp clamps. This is primarily because the clamps will read down to 5% of its rated value. So a 300 amp clamp will read down to a 15 amp input. If it's below 15 amp, we won't record it. Okay, so you need to be aware of the limitations of each clamp. It's 5% of the rated value. 150 amp, you can go down to 7.5 amps. Okay. Now what I'm doing is I'm looking at the motor inputs, and I'm looking at 3 phase. The motor count is 2. Phases I'm monitoring is 3. So I monitor all 3 phase of each motor. Now for motor 3 input, I'm actually going to monitor voltage. And the voltage I'm going to be monitoring is through a step-down transformer, and I'm going to use my Y wiring connections for a Y connection. Because I'm going to assume for this particular station it's a duplex with a 480 volt system, and it most likely is going to be a Y connection, but that's not always true. And there's really no rhyme or reason why we go to Y to delta, but there is a wide range of selections here for the stations themselves. But I'm going to select Y on motor 3 input through my step-down transformer. I'm going to be using 3-phase sensors, and I'm going to use the 75 amp clamps. I'm going to hit next. Check device screen, just hit next for this one, and you notice it will actually check your battery voltage that you have inside the unit, and it also asks you what your expected power source is going to be. The MerMaid system was designed and intended to use an AC adapter as power input and a battery as a backup. But you can monitor a station for a short time on batteries only. That's going to depend on the frequency of the pump running and the data being collected, but typically you can get away with 3 weeks, sometimes a little bit more on a station on batteries only. But for this station, I'm going to go ahead and connect up to the duplex power outlet, and I'm going to use my AC power adapter, and I'm going to select it there, and I hit next. The LED mode is actually how do you want your communication LED to flash or blink. And what I like to use on this particular station is activate my inputs only when the power supply is used. And the reason behind this is that when I'm connected up to the duplex for my AC power and it's good, I have good AC coming to my data logger, I will have a blinking light. This way I don't need a multimeter to check to see if my duplex is good. Then hit next. This is where you would update the time or update the time and erase the events. The difference is when you update the time and erase the events, any data that you had previously stored in the particular data logger that you're setting up on this event will erase all the events in that recorder. And that's what I like to do each time. Start fresh. Now for the alarms and relays, you can modify how you want to output your digital output. You can have no alarms, or you can select high temperature, high rain event, phase imbalance, and there's a few at low batteries. You can have a digital event, and this could go to your SCADA system if you wanted to as a digital input. And also you can check your relay by hitting on and off, and you can physically hear it clicking inside the data logger. At this point in time, just hit OK. And now Willow Point, my station file, is going to be the file name for this particular station. Now I know Willow Point, for instance, has 3 lift stations in that area of Willow Point, and I'm going to say this is Willow Point LS number 2. Okay, so when I save this information, it's for that particular station file. But that is up to you how you want to file all the data for your station files. I hit save, and now you notice I have a motor summary, analog chart, digital events, flow and rain, inflow and infiltration, and evaluation report available to me, but I haven't collected any data from the device. One thing I want to mention, I was making a generic station. Now once I got out the station, I found out 2 things. Number 1, my levels weren't correct. And number 2, the 75 amp clamps were not large enough. I needed 300 amp clamps for this duplex station because the motors were, say, 75 horse motors. So first of all, the levels were incorrect. So I go into this part of the station file. I'll say the cylinder was correct. It wasn't 10 foot, it was 8 foot. But the levels were incorrect. The depth to my all-off was 120 inches. My first on was actually 76 inches. But this time, the lag was 52 inches. So you can modify this after you find out the actual data for that particular station, and then collect OK. Now we also said that the sensors were incorrect. We had set it up for 75 amp sensors. To change this, just go into the generated sensor set, and you'll go to each individual sensor. Now, typically, the name of that would be motor 1 in any of your reports, but I'm going to say it's pump 1. And pump 1 was an AC current unit, but instead of 75 amp, I'm going to be using the 300 amp clamps. So I just selected that and hit next. Now for motor 2, I'm going to call it pump 2. And I'm going to reselect the model of clamps to the 300 amp clamps. And then is all I'm going to do. Well, I can also go next and it will go to motor 3. Well, motor 3, we knew we were monitoring the AC voltage through a Y connection. I'm going to go ahead and say the display name is going to be voltage. And then I want to hit OK. If you notice, down the generated sensor set, it's now 300 amp clamps. And that is the end of setting up a generic duplex station file. If you have any questions, go through the video again. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you might have.